Data centers provide assurances about the management of data. These assurances can be enforced by computer actionable rules. The Research Data Alliance Practical Policy Working Group conducted a survey of 30 data centers. Each center listed between 3 and 10 data management tasks. A total of 24 different tasks were identified. The top 11 tasks were then summarized and published as a deliverable for the Research Data Alliance. Policy templates were created for the 11 tasks. The policy templates identified the constraints that controlled each task, the state information needed to evaluate the constraints, the operations that were executed for each task, and the state information needed to apply the operations. 3 data centers contributed policy examples for the 11 tasks. Example scripts were provided for the general parallel file system, and example IRODS rules were provided for EUDAT, European Collaborative Data Infrastructure, and the DataNet Federation Consortium. Each data center task required the implementation of multiple policies. Example policies are published in the Policy Examples Workbook in Chapter 4 for each task area. The data center tasks are contextual metadata extraction. Policy examples included loading metadata from an XML file, loading metadata from a pipe delimited file, contextual metadata extraction through pattern recognition, and the stripping of metadata from a file. Data access control. Policy examples include finding the user ID associated with the username, finding the data ID associated with the file name, setting write access control using the user ID and data ID, setting operations that can be applied by the public user, and checking access controls on a file. Data backup. Policy examples include data versioning, data backup staging, and copying of files to a federated staging area. Data retention. Policy examples include purging of files from a cache and identification of files that reach their expiration date. Data disposition. Policy examples include movement of expired files to an archive. The data center tasks also included the following areas: integrity. Policy examples include verification of access controls on files and checking the integrity and number of replicas of files in a collection. Notification. Policy examples include notification when a collection is deleted and notification for specific events. Restricted searching. Policy examples include setting of strict access controls to limit ability to see files owned by others, and controlled queries through registration of database queries. Storage cost reports. Policy examples include computation of storage cost for files in a collection. Use agreements. Policy examples include setting receipt of signed use agreements and identification of users without a signed use agreement. An example policy for tracking use agreements is shown here. The policy sets the value to received for a metadata attribute called use agreement. The use agreement attribute is set as metadata on the user account name that is input to the rule. You can then check whether or not a specific person has access based on whether or not the use agreement has been received. Take 7 minutes and answer exercise 34. Describe how data center tasks compare to preservation tasks. Which tasks are similar? Which tasks are unique to a data center? Please load your paragraph into the Lifetime Library in the subcollection class INLS 624 by the end of today's class.